Europe. Now we're learning that Denmark's Prime Minister has stated that Russia would only end its war in Ukraine if forced to do so, and has warned that Moscow's continued aggression poses a threat not only to Ukraine but to all of Europe. He's in fact made these remarks as she's hosted the summit of the European political community in Copenhagen, where leaders from 47 countries have gathered to discuss the security across the continent. Listen in.
Russia will not stop until they are forced to do so. And they are a threat, not only to Ukraine, but to all of us. Today, we have one major task ahead of us. We have to make our common Europe so strong that war against us becomes unthinkable. And we have to do it now. But peace with Russia can only be achieved through strength. We have to strengthen Ukraine and weaken Russia with more sanctions. We have to be able to finance the armed forces in Ukraine. All of us have to deliver more weapons, more ammunition, and we have to do it faster. Nowhere it will make a greater impact for European security than at the front lines in Ukraine.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has also joined the summit, which is focusing heavily on Russia's ongoing war and the geopolitical implications. At the summit, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has stated that Russia remains unrelenting in its campaign and must be countered with everything that the EU nations have. French President Emmanuel Macron has also added that the Russian shadow fleet represents an important part of Russia's business model, so it is important to put pressure on it as well, as we've recently seen a shadow fleet being immobilized off the coast of France. Russia has strongly criticized comments from the EU and NATO leaders about a potential Russian threat, warning that such statements could be a pretext for provocations and to justify increased Western military spending. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova has also called the EU's discussions to use frozen Russian assets to loan funds to Ukraine as delusional, stressing that Moscow would respond appropriately, citing this as a violation of international law. She's in fact also emphasized that Russia has a rich arsenal of economic and political means to retaliate. Meanwhile, the Foreign Ministry spokesperson has also urged EU governments, particularly Belgium, to honor their international obligations as well. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Robinder Sachdev. So interesting developments coming in. EU leaders, NATO leaders staunchly backing Ukraine. Interestingly, this comes at a time when the Trump administration has stated that it will provide Ukraine with intelligence on long-range energy infrastructure targets inside Russia, and the US has also urged NATO allies to do the same. Will NATO do so? Will they toe the line with their response, or be as calibrated as we are witnessing at the moment in order to avoid a hot war?
No, NATO seems to be, tightening its belt or girding up to get more seriously into supporting Ukraine, be it financially, be it with weapons, be it with co-production, be it with intelligence sharing in its war against Russia. As you heard from the Danish Prime Minister, she's putting it this way that, stopping Russia at Ukraine is absolutely essential for Europe. In fact, in her speech that you just played, she also called for putting up a drone wall for Europe to protect Europe, right? Now, that said, what it indicates to me is that the EU and the EU, let's say, will get actually even more aggressive and take some steps against countries who are importing Russian oil and gas. Okay, EU itself does, but it's claiming it's reducing, so it doesn't look what it's doing itself. But that would mean, especially for China and countries like China and India, they would come around perhaps to imposing secondary sanctions. And remember, Trump administration has been pushing Europe to put sanctions on countries importing oil and gas from Russia, i.e. especially China and India, so that Russia doesn't get the oil and gas revenues from these countries, the big ones. though Turkey is another one, but Turkey being a NATO member gets away.
Yes.
The EU countries who do also get away because they are EU. So who remains in the crosshairs? Mainly China and India. So it could happen that while EU is itself, I think consolidating and preparing with its financial packages, weapons packages, etc., to help out Ukraine, this aspect of sanctions could be another tool that they could use, which would be the first ever. I think EU has never, I think, sanctioned countries or companies in this context along with America. Typically, it's America which imposes tariffs, right, and sanction. EU doesn't normally, but now it could come around. And thirdly and lastly, maybe to the point of the Russian central bank money, of which about $250 billion is sitting in Brussels, and the remaining 50 billion is, I think, a few billions in Switzerland and then in New York, but majorly in Brussels. Since long, European countries have been angling ways to kind of use that money, in fact, they're already using the interest of that money. The UK, several of its weapon programs that were supplying to Ukraine are being, let's say, are being guaranteed. The loan for those has been guaranteed by the interest money which is accruing to the central bank money of Russia in Brussels. But what EU is now talking is something even more. Perhaps using some of that money and reparations for the war, etc., long term. But the point is that if it does that, then it will be a major blow to the international financial system. That's the only reason they are holding back. Because trust would be broken in the financial systems. Countries put their monies in different banks. Okay, US does freeze accounts at times. We've seen that, right? Which are in the US of certain designated organizations. But to do something like this, the central bank money, you have the money, you're completely confiscating it. This is more than it's a war on another level also. It's an economic war. But the point is, I don't know what options Russia has other than threatening and other than, of course, the fear itself of the European authorities that the trust in European financial systems will melt down amongst other countries. No country, in any case, countries are rethinking how and where to park their central bank monies or sovereign fund monies, legal monies. Countries should look to deposit their monies in regimes of countries where they do not face such threats. So that would be a major, impact on the European financial industry. They will not want to do it, the banking industry. But if they go ahead, I don't know what options does Russia have to counter it.
All right, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for taking out time sharing your analysis with us on NewsX World. With that,